Good morning. It is a little bit of an overcast morning here as per the usual Northern California climate. Looks like you are sitting in front of a lot of lovely art, DeAnna.
I love me some art. I gotta say, art just moves me. I am so thrilled that my partner is an artist in everything he can get his head, heart, or hands on. And wow, is that a precious thing? And yeah, I am surrounded by some art. I'll maybe, just kind of even explain it because this one's behind me a lot, even though I'm kind of like, maybe I should change location a little bit more. But this one's the Kala chakra. Kala meaning timing, and chakra, energy, energy source. And it's the masculine meeting the feminine, and how there is a oneness and there's a merge and there's even a crossover into masculine into feminine and feminine into masculine. And it becomes one thing, which becomes one person, one human. And that one human, is any variety of mix in this unity of this masculine feminine. And I just feel like it's one of the ways I can often sit and represent in a really subtle way and just be like, hey, there's a reason. This is about timing, and it's also timing of birth and the coming together of fluids that make a baby, which is again, human. But the Kala chakra is so very important in life. This idea that we are masculine, feminine, we know how to hold a container and in support. It's a container of support, masculine. And then we have the spark of feminine. And we have to remember that having space for a spark, a container for a spark, neither one of those do well alone. Your container is just a container, a spark is just a spark. But how's it gonna collide and intertwine and merge into culmination, into something? And that's how humans create life, create goals, create, therapeutic yurts in their backyard. And art in general. And I had a really dear student friend who feels more like a colleague. She is quite an expert. She is a doctor, Hannah. Dr. Hannah, she is so fabulous. And this is her piece right here. She works with recycled materials and a lot of I don't even know how to talk about how phenomenal Hannah is. So I hope we find her Instagram, because I'm not the one to be all up in there. We'll make sure we post, but you got to check out her stuff. It is just very powerful, and you can see it's very all inclusive and respectful and recycled. So yeah, I am surrounded by really powerful pieces that are kind of big pieces of life. And to be honest, if I was going to grab another one, because I really am kind of, wow, I'm so surrounded by art right now. We have these beautiful notebooks. And if you are just listening to me right now and you cannot see them on the screen, oh my gosh, these are Scott Jenkins, my love partner. And Scott has been taking all of his art that used to be on the walls at the DeAnna Center, and he's making them into notes. And I know Andrea is waiting for plaid baby, right? Horizontal man, vertical woman, plaid baby. This is one of the most beautiful in the classroom pictures, paintings that just gives so much reflection to this masculine, feminine, this merging and just living a life amongst this process right here, humans, and then our experiences around it. And I know Andrea is waiting for it to be a tote bag. So I think we got to get on that, because this really would make the most brilliant tote bag. And it's quite a nice little, if somebody really pays attention, there's a lot of details telling lots of stories in this beautiful picture. So yeah, art is in life, and I'm surrounded by it in my home because there's two very prolific artists who live here. Diane Senia, my landlord, and then Scott Jenkins. So I'm surrounded on the daily, and I guess I'm bringing this up because, well, it makes me feel good. And it's one of the things that keeps me laughing and keeps me having fun and playing and continuing to live life, even when there is so much crazy, tragic, weirdo, unknown. And I think that's always been there. We're just a little more heightened right now. And I'm just realizing like there's enough of that I'm already addressing, just like everybody else. And why not make sure that I kind of flip that around on the regular every day with kind of like going out in nature and laughing. And I just want to keep us back to that. Like the harder it is, the more simple we need to be, you know, literally. And that's the same thing when somebody is like in a really hard health issue, you know, cancer stage 4, you know, or hepatitis, you know what I mean? Like just things that are pretty big. The more simple I go as a practitioner and then babies step into it, the better healing. And that has proven itself year after year after year. I think I can make this perfect, great, fabulous formula. And then you need this vitamin and this and this supplement and get on the probiotic and everything. And then sometimes it's just like the body's already overwhelmed. It's in a health crisis. It only has so much energy. And that body needs to really like, just like, what is the most important 3 things you can give it for the next 2 weeks? Oh, it took away this symptom. Okay, these are still here. What do I need to add to change those? Okay, 2 more weeks, 2 more weeks. And then imagine where you could be in 3 months. And what happens for people is when things get really huge, we start looking at every direction. It's just natural. And then we get maybe too many opinions or maybe too many supplements and plants and, you know, superfood. And then you're just kind of hitting your body over the head with more than it can handle. And that's what's already happening in life, is that more than you can feel you can handle is happening when we're in a crisis. So just wanting us to kind of, you know, hey, you know, I have those things that happen in my life too, you know. I get to come here and be a stable force, hopefully, but that doesn't mean that's just what it looks like for me all day long. I have to turn it around too, you know. I have my own challenges and issues, you know what I mean? So just, you know, and then now we can get serious. It's okay to play and art and music and nature. And then we get to be like, hey, let's get down to business. There really is some serious things to do. And so let's flip it over into that space, Andrea. That's my little tangent for the day.
That's amazing. Yeah, art is such a powerful force to open up different parts of the heart and the mind when you're feeling like you're oppressed by a lot of things going on. So that's really fantastic that you've got that around you. Mm-hmm. So let's dig in. There are a lot of questions. And if you're watching, if you're new, this is Ask DeAnna Anything. This is her community offering to get to the heart of some of the questions that are burning within you. And she accepts all comers. These are questions that folks email to us, submit on a form, send via voicemail or on Instagram and Facebook. We've got a really nice lineup of fascinating questions today. First thing I want to do is to clarify a couple of product recommendations from some items that DeAnna's mentioned in the past. In talking about gut health, which is really where it all starts and progresses. In a recent recording, she talked about probiotics, and we got a question wanting to clarify some of the items that she mentioned. One of them that she recommends is Proflora 4R. Another company is Microbiome Lab, and they make a product called Megaspore. Also Garden of Life, giving primal defense. It's a really great product that's available many, many places. And then finally, one of the probiotic types, the strains that she mentioned, is Bulardi. That's spelled Bulardi. So if you wondered about that, that's the specific type of probiotic that she was referring to. We had recently had questions about reflux and GERD. And so those are items to consider. Our next question. Oh, go ahead.
I had spoken about the Bulardi. I'll just be quick, but I had spoken about the Bulardi specifically because it goes in and chomps up toxins. It's a chomper of plaque and die off and, really breaking down bacteria. It's an active, but still nourishing probiotic. So if you feel like your gut needs that, then that would be where you'd want to get something that has a higher amount of Bulardi. And it's in most formulas, but I was talking about how each one of them has very specific hot, cold, wet, dry functions. And that one's an active function. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. And I'll be posting the links to these products as well in the comments. Our next question comes from Amy. She's asking about the menstrual cycle. She wonders what's normal and what's not normal. What she's experiencing is a bit of discharge that is yellow-green and wonders if that's normal. She didn't mention when she sees this discharge. I would assume it's kind of in the standard time that you might see that right after ovulation, but I don't know if you can speak to that a little bit.
Okay, so the color and the odor and the texture is very much how we read our fluids. So, just like I do all these tongue assessments and I'm reading the coating, the texture, the color, and the cracks. So when we're looking at fluids, we always are looking for like, how thick or how thin is it? And then what color is it? And is there an odor or not? So when we see yellow, just to get really down to it, because we have a lot of questions today, when we see yellow, we know there's probably a fungal. There's probably a fungus, or at least there is inflammation, but we know there's yellow, more fungal and some bacterial. And we know that bacteria infection we always know we got sicker when something turns green. So that green could be some metallic coloring from old blood, if this is during menses that you're seeing these fluids. But if you're seeing green fluids, you could see yellow anytime and know that yeast is moving through your system. But if you see green in that ovulation time, like when you have your cervical mucus, then probably as you're releasing some of that, some of those hormones during our fertile time, there's probably some bacteria that is moving with it. So I would be looking at like what they call vaginosis, or I'd be wondering about like maybe getting a PAP and having them do a culture and check for an infection or a fungal, something of that sort, just to know what you're working with. But those would be, if I had that, I wouldn't be scared, but I would know that I need I need to get the douching going on. So I need to be, and I need to be doing kegels and flushing while I douche. Douching is like cleaning a pan. So we got to stop making it some big, huge problem or thing. You're literally putting inserting the tube and the tip, and it's like a little fountain, and you just, clean. You want to squat and open yourself up, and you just want to clean your pan and get to know where your cervix is and clean up around that ring of the cervix. And you'll start finding like, oh, that's a little sore right there. Like when you touch certain place on your body, this is just in your body. It's still available to us. We can go in there. Things feel good in there, by the way. So this can feel good. And you just kind of use the wand and you clean up the edges, and you do a little kegel and then flush, and then muscle kegel and then flush. You're done in 5 minutes. You fill up the whole bucket, and it just drains through. It's not even an enema where you have to try to hold it, massage, and lay on your side. Easy. We don't douche during menses, but you can douche right before as a way of letting down your blood. Like say you're one of those like 3-day delayed and you're just like, come on already, you know, you can douche to get that blood to downward motion, because let's remember that's what it is. And you're teaching it to cleanse. That's what the blood is. It's a bunch of hormones that we got to get out of our bodies if we are not building a baby, because we would have either built a baby with those hormones or those hormones are not of value. And so we flush them out. So we douche, and it's really common. We used to leave the red tent as women in communities. We used to gather, you know, and the elders and the children and those menstruating all had specific beautiful duties and a place in their society to like be connected and united. And they would douche before they would leave the tent. You know, great book with the red tent. Oh my gosh, it's been around a long time now, but it's like a classic, you know. But yeah, so I really want to take this opportunity, and I have a pelvic floor webinar that is really brilliant. I think it's even like a 3-hour, you know, it's really thorough. But I really want to bring up douching and just like making sure you're moving that out. If I was going to mention an essential oil, it would be spikenard, probably as my go-to, because you could put it, you know, just 3 drops right on your finger, and you could swab inside, and you could do that every day, and it wouldn't like hurt your skin, or it's just going to help. So if you can say there's a fungus or bacteria, spikenard is so your dear, dear, dear friend. And we have that. But you know, that would be the go-to, and it's low dose, you know, so it's really worth the money. I mean, at that rate, you're going to be on it for 2 months, and then the price actually isn't that much, you know, so keep that in mind. With those essential oils, they seem like a lot, but they last such a long time. You end up having this whole toolbox of medicine, you know. So yeah, that would be my go-to. And that's what I would be thinking of. Sometimes fungal has more odor, and bacteria infection can have less, but there's some that have even more than fungal. But fungal smells yeasty, you know, think of bread and beer, you know. Ooh, you know, my little thing, Andrea, that gets people, yeast in a pint. That's how I teach people to be all, think about that, you know. But I'm like, oh, yeast in a pint, I don't know. And then we always feel like we put a pint of yeast in our bodies because it's bloaty and farty and all kinds of things that show that there's fungus among us. But that's what I think of with this question. And I do think that it is important to be like, are we talking about when you menstruate, or are we talking about when you ovulate? And that is the one thing Andrea and I both are bringing up in different, you know, is like, well, it's still those colors tell us there's a foreign invader. But if it was with blood clot, it could be that you're not letting down your uterus, or maybe your uterus needs more massaging when you're getting ready to menstruate, and you might need to help it slough. Like you can exercise your uterus. You can massage your uterus. You go down to the pubis bone and you work your way up to the belly button, and you keep doing that just straight up to your belly button until you feel like it's softened, and then go right to the side and kind of do a bow, you know, so you're going up and around your uterus up to the belly button, and then the other side, and then you could do those together, and now you're making a moon, you know, and you're just massaging up, and you're tonifying it, and you're making sure it's there, and it's like really not feeling too thick or painful. And a little bit of pain means the lymph isn't moving, and that means the blood isn't going to slough as easy, and then you'll just have more clots. And clots have that metallic finish where there could be multiple colors, but it's still just all blood, old blood. There could be some yellowing, little green, like, you know, just keep that in mind. If it's during menses, you could have some old blood in there that you just need to help yourself move. And now we're back to making sure you douche so that you get that moving, and now we can do more massage. But these are things we should be doing no matter what. Whether you got that color fluid or not, women should we should take back our right to do pelvic floor steams, and feel like we are juicy and nourished in our core and our perineum and our hips, our root chakra. And we are allowed to go in and clear ourselves out and flush ourselves and feel just primed at our base. I mean, our uterus and our cervix are our compass. They need to be right in the middle, and they need to be just like ready and be able to just expand and contract at any given time for whatever is happening, whether that be cervical mucus or whether that be blood flowing. We need our uterus primed to do all of this. And so, yeah, that's where I will go with this, because it's such a big, beautiful topic, you know. And then watch the pelvic floor webinar, because you'll learn so much more. And it has a handout that explains these things. So, you know, you'd also be getting the education, so you'd see all the ways you can do this. Yeah.
Thank
you. I hope that helps.
We do have a couple of follow-up questions.
Okay.
We've got Padma Wellbeing here in the chat, wondering first, that spikenard, whether you'd be using that neat or whether it'd be diluted or as part of a yoni steam, perhaps.
Yeah. So the thing I like about the spikenard is you really can put it just straight on your fingers and just do a swab even on the daily. So you can use it neat on skin. And that's one of the things I like about it, because that just makes it so easy, you know, swab before you go to bed, you know, and just, you know, after you pee in the morning, you know, and it's just really easy. There's other oils that would maybe kill bacteria quicker or faster, but I'm not into doing things quick and fast like that. I feel like, hey, you know, you do this for 2 months and like you're set and you just slowly, you know, get a handle on it. And it's a much better way to have follow through. Otherwise, sometimes you kill it, you know, and then some of it kind of comes back to life because it didn't move out slowly. So we got to get that stuff out, not just kill it on demand. But spiky is so good. Oh, sorry, I call it spiky. But spiky is so good for just that slow, steady, let's follow through, let's get this to the end, done. And then, yeah, you could put, well, spikenard is a resin, essential oil resin, still a volatile gas, but it's resinous. So it doesn't do good in water. So like if you were going to do a douche and try to just put spikenard or an enema and put it in there, because I use it in both, it's not going to disperse. So what I always suggest is like just the littlest bit of yogurt or a little bit of coconut milk or a little bit of raw milk, like whatever you have, but it's going to emulsify that essential oil and really work it through. And we do use a lot of yogurt for bacteria. It's a very common douche. From the old days, they used curd, yogurt, you know, and that was the main thing. They did aloe and curd, and that's how they dealt with any kind of bacteria or odor. So, but it'll help you emulsify it if you want to put it in water. Same with spikenard in a bath, you know. Sometimes you could put a few drops because it's so good for like, you know, just anybody who has like eczema or skin conditions or a topical fungus like tinea. It's not going to kill it, but it's a great mix. And I'll put a couple drops on oats and then put oats in the bag. You know, I use an old sock. That's me. You know, you were always left with one sock, but I can't seem to throw the other one away. I'm like, this is my pouches for my baths, you know, so that's what I use. And I just put oats in there, and then that'll emulsify the spikenard in the water. Yeah. You could put it in oil. You can even do an oil douche and prime your whole tissue if your yoni is really, really under lubricated, and if it's dry, which is a real problem for a lot of people. And so those oats and that nourishment and that oil, you know, wow. So, you know, you could do spikenard oil too. You'd probably do about 40 drops of spikenard to 4 ounces of what I would do is Mahanarayan oil. If you want the super lube, Mahanarayan would be a little more active. If you want the super lube, you'd put 40 drops in a 4 ounce of ashwagandha bala oil. And that would be your most nutritive. So that now we're talking about some cool stuff. You could do a seaweed. I do seaweed tea for my douche base. I've done turmeric where I just have fresh ground turmeric, and, you know, that's better for yeast, but there's so many directions we could go. Yeah. I hope that answers the question. More than answers the question, I think.
That's perfect. And as it turns out, that question came from Kristen, and her follow-up question is actually the question we're going to be addressing later, which is about cysts. So
Okay.
thanks for being here. We're glad you're here to hear the answers. And Martha and Molly are here too. So
Hi.
that's really sweet to see.
Oh, thank you all for
All
being
right.
here.
Awesome. All right. So our next question comes from Amy, who is asking about your thoughts regarding multiple sclerosis, that there's an individual who believes that MS comes from the herpes virus as a branch of Epstein-Barr. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've heard this. I haven't read any of the actual publications, so I don't want to go in saying that is a right or wrong concept because I really don't know the direction. But I can see a correlation in the way that MS is often, and what I have seen, in my opinion, and I've worked with it very, very directly and very closely during the pandemic with a specific client. And wow, it's like, doesn't even have it anymore. I mean, it's really, I can walk people out of it in some cases. And in other cases, it's a little bit already set in the nervous system in a very deep way. So it depends on the person we're talking about. Herpes is more set in its way, and it's a virus that's systemic, that really doesn't move through, leave your blood. It doesn't get remedied in your body by your immune system. And so when I think of systemic or chronic MS and somebody who's having some of the more severe symptoms, which is what scares everybody, is that we have some pretty severe symptoms and body irregularities and disfigurement that can happen. And then that's our chronic systemic MS. And I feel like I totally am along with, like, there's a viral load, there's something going on. And herpes, I am a big believer that herpes is not only, last I looked, we were at about 67% population living with a form of herpes. That is really high. They're kind of not even wanting to make like a vaccine or anything, because they just figure eventually we're all just going to have it and it's not killing anyone. And so we'll work our way through. And so it's actually an interesting question in its own right on what herpes is and how many people have it. And it's systemic. So it makes systemic autoimmune disorders. And that's what we have to be looking at, and it is an autoimmune disorder. It's been categorized about, I think, 8 years ago or so. So it's real. And when I look at acute MS, which I think is being I think people are getting MS that are more acute, and it's a secondary symptom to the immune system screaming and talking really loud, and it's talking through all of the tissues, because our immune system, our lymph, feeds our blood to our muscle, to our skin, to our bones, to our nerves, to our reproductive. All 7 tissues in the body are fed by that lymph river immune system. And it'll start giving so many symptoms telling you it is absolutely acute and in shock, and it's flared, and it's headed towards a full-on autoimmune disorder. So that's the first thing, is I always have to meet the person or consider the person and be able to be like, are we talking chronic? And it's really about prevention of it going further. And it's about maintenance, and being very realistic that some people are in health situations and disease states that need prevention of going further and maintenance. And that is what is the truth. And, sometimes that's hard to come to terms with, but the more you learn how to maintain, the more you're like, well, hey, man, at least I stopped in its tracks. And I see that all the time with Parkinson's and MS and things that are chronic, and cancer. I see this a lot. just like herpes, that's constantly outbreaking and making nerve disorders. And then you make it where it's like nobody's getting the nerve stuff and nobody's getting the outbreaks, and they're actually maintaining with herpes. So that's true too. And then there's the people getting MS because nobody's explaining or understanding that all these tissues are flared, and they're like trying to tell you something, and they're starting to get into a trajectory. And that's always a good news for someone, because those are the ones where I can be all, you know what, you might be able to turn this around. There's going to be a lot of hard work ahead. I'm sorry, but it is work. The moment you're in a health crisis, there is work to do. And it means you can't even work out in the world as much because you got to do the work for you. And then that's hard. That just brings up all kinds of things. So we have to remember that picture too. But so much stuff that can be learned that you could start doing yourself every day, along with some really specific forms of body work. And breaking down adhesions in the joints is everything to the person with MS. Adhesions, same with Parkinson's, the amount of inflammation that is affecting the ligaments and the tendons and the muscles attached to bones, joints. And then you get these adhesions that are stiffening you up and tightening you up and causing pain, and fire's not moving freely through that nervous system that runs through those muscles. And that's where it's at. So like stretching out the joints and gua sha the joints. The wood gua sha is perfect for this because it really does kind of warm up that adhesion muscle fat cells and helps you to kind of disperse it and elongate it. But stretching, yoga, breathing, but definitely gua sha, detailing. It's all about the joints. It's all about the sternum, and it's all about the sacrum. So these are the key points in no matter what MS or what nerve muscle disorder I'm dealing with, because it affects nerves and muscle. I got to open the lymph. I got to have lymph and blood flow to change any other tissue. And so lymph is where it's at. And then I have to focus on those joints and look for those adhesions and help them melt them down and break them down. So castor oil with that gua sha, really awesome combo. The other one is I would give a shout out for Litsea cubeba, which I have as an essential oil. It needs an oil. You can't put that straight on your skin. It's Chinese lemongrass. It's a milder lemongrass than the other one that will dry you out in a second. That's why I have it. But it's just also a nice name. Litsea cubeba. Don't you want to use it? It smells so good. But you can just do maybe 6 drops twice a day. And then you put it in some oil, put it in that castor, and then just start really working those key joints out. The stiffer the joint, the more the pain in the joint. Start there. And the more pain you have, you just need to do some pumping, some pressing, kind of decompress the pain, move it. You'll notice like, whoa, it's moving and I don't have as much pain because I just keep pressing and pumping and pressing and pumping. And then you start moving it down onto the muscle and then go to the next one. And you just do tons of what's called compression. You do lots of compression, and then you go in wherever it's not going to hurt you too much. And you start driving that gua sha on there and breaking that stuff up. So if I'm just going to I hope some people with MS, and there's so many people with MS, oh my gosh, I hope some people are definitely, just like, how much could you change with touch? And it's your body that hurts. So that touch is everything to changing that hurt, and you can learn. We can play a game like, I don't know how to use my hands. I'm not a massage therapist. Start touching and you'll learn, and you'll get more comfortable, and you'll get more comfortable with your body, But I find a lot of trauma in the psoas also with people with MS, and sometimes they need a muscular unwinding to get the nerves to breathe. So think about that. The muscles have to unwind for the nerves to breathe and flow. That is key to this topic of MS. Yeah. So I guess that's where that's my short, but oh man, I have a client who I help so much. And oh my gosh, we got so close. I just love him. And oh my gosh, it just was really fun to take somebody through who I'm like, oh, this is a really cool person. And I don't want them to be in pain and just living with this, forever. And I could tell it was acute and not like chronic trajectory, which is harder, sadder, and more challenging, I should just say. And yeah, I mean, he's back to like who he was and even what his dream was. And he is like, boom. And he himself has been like, maybe I even said, I was like, maybe I should do like an Instagram live with you, like just to have people hear his story, because he's such a solid storyteller. And he's a practitioner himself who was having to give up his life work, So I'm going to get him on. I'm going to get him on. I'm going to do a show with him so he can really represent and tell his story of what it is to have MS and kind of unwind it, because that
would be amazing.
He did it.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Our next question comes from Rose. She says she'd appreciate advice about a ganglion cyst located where the back of the hand meets the wrist.
Okay, most common place on the back of the hand or the inside or the outside, but this is the most common place. We have it in this joint at the ulna bone. And one thing I like to mention is just like, where is it placed? Because these are different meridians, which speak your nerves, speaking about your organs. So let me just kind of like, let's just take a moment. So this is colon, thumb. Oh, sorry, lung. So your thumb is lung, right? So I'm always like, thumbs up to my lungs. And I got two of them and I got two thumbs. I just do these things so I learn things. I have to memorize, I'm not like a student. I'm more of a like good memory game. So lung, thumb, and then you have your colon, pointer. How's your colon today? So you got your little pointer to the colon, and then you got your pericardium. Most people don't even know really what this is, but it's connected to your primary blood flow. And it's your sac around your heart. And you have your tridosha. So it's triple burner in Chinese. They call it tridosha in Ayurveda. And that's your ring finger. And this one is really your stomach, small intestine, and colon, your GI tract, your three primary, the three primary organs that keep us healthy. Ring finger, right? And then you got your pinky. Why does the smallest finger have two meridians? I don't know. But heart and small intestine. So this is what? So where is the cyst? It tells you a little bit more about your internal body, because I don't want to take out of this picture that something internal is going on that is boiling up. And we could look at that emotionally. And you can also look at that as, inflammation, and it's getting stuck in a place of repetition. So it's also, how are you using your hands? And are you keeping your hands like pliable and soft enough that they're not, and nourished enough to where they're not getting so irritated that they make a pocket? And that's a ganglion cyst. It's a pocket of scarred tissue. That's why they're hard. Which is different than a cyst. A cyst is like an internal boil, or a boil that surfaces, and they're kind of like softer and more fluid until they're old. So ganglion cysts have scar tissue and they're thick, and you'd have to really squeeze on them usually for them to hurt. And they can get infected, so some people will be able to move liquid out of it, yellow liquid. But what do? Okay, we got to know what a ganglion cyst is, because I don't want you just to get another one. I don't want this person to get rid of this one and form another, because that's what'll happen, So I just want to make sure we once and for all. So what do we do in the once and for all? Ganglion cyst. You're going to soften it. And actually, I just told you what was needed for scar tissue. So, or for changing adhesions with the MS. So we're back to, let's say, a cubeba and castor oil. The other go-to is rose geranium and castor oil. Rose geranium, you put straight on your skin, castor on it, but you need to soften that thing. So you got to get around the perimeter with a gua sha. I should just always have my gua shas are right there. You know what I mean? I should always have one here. I'm like, hi, way to represent. And you're just going to go in with that gua sha and you're going to soften all around the edges and you're going to press on it. You're going to squeeze it. You're going to press on it. You're going to squeeze it. Add more castor, drive it in. Add more castor, drive it in. Warmer the skin, the more liquefying is going to happen. So maybe make sure you had a hot water bottle on your hand first, or you just took a bath or put it under some hot water, And then the other thing is there is a very interesting story that I think I will take a moment to tell. I know Andrea really likes this story. This is a true story. It's very short, but it's interesting. I had somebody with the Ganglion cyst, and I started doing a bunch of research because whenever I don't know or something's new, my whole life, when something is new that somebody has, I'm like, I get to research and learn all about this, because if I keep doing this for my whole life, somebody else is going to show up with that thing too. It's not just a one-time thing. It's like, I'm supposed to learn, and I trust the universe that way. And so I had this person with the ganglion cyst, and I started just like, how am I going to get to this thing? Okay, it's breaking down a little bit and softening with the gua sha and castor. I figured that out right away. But man, those things are stubborn. Like, they're thick. They're like a massive scar tissue. But there's a cyst pocket inside that you have to deflate to be able to really make it heal and go away. So you can even soften it and it'll just fill back up, So what do you have to do to follow through after you do all this softening? Well, when I started looking things up and gaining a cyst, I kept getting the same exact information everywhere I went, which was the reference to Bible thumping. And I was like, what does this have to do? Like, the remedy is Bible thumping? And I finally found this little story that was like, literally, they learned that you have to deflate, you have to pop and break and crack that cyst open for it to go away and remedy. And so they took the biggest book they had in the house, and they literally would put the person's wrist down on the table, and they would thump that Bible so hard on that wrist. Oh my gosh, this is a true story, that it would pop the cyst and it would go away. So this is where the concept of Bible thumping came from. And I just think it's really funny. So what I'd like to say, is the biggest book in your house. No, but I haven't even found, like, I had this, I took this to the client. Okay. And she found a big old book. I think it was cute. She was like, I'm not using a Bible. I don't even think I have one. We're like, what's your big book? What do you got? And she said she, had a friend like try. And I've had people say, you know what? I found this reference too, because it's online. I tried the book thumping. I tried that too. And we haven't really seen it to totally work. But what I have seen work is somebody who comes in maybe in a 3-day panchakarma. So I have 3 days, and that's not exactly what I'm doing right now. So I'm sorry to have to even make mention of it. But, I would soften it for them. And then I would go in and, I would finally, take a rock. So this is what I'm suggesting. You take a rock and you put it right on it, and then you do rock tapping. Okay, better than Bible thumping, okay? Rock tapping. So I just like to turn things into something a little more, supportive. And that's how I have broken down cysts for people. And I broke one down for Scott, my partner too. So these things happen, and I have seen that they won't go away until you deflate that pocket that's inside that scar tissue. So that's a little bit about what I've learned. And I've had a lot of people do this where I'm like, hey, you're here for just a little mini treatment. Let me just like put some castor on here and some, let's say, cubeba. Let's soak it a minute. Let me soften it up for you. And then you're going to have to do some rock tapping and like really, and it doesn't feel good because they're near bone, you know? So I'm not saying this is going to feel good at all. But that's really the only thing you have unless you want to do minor surgery, and they will remove it. And it's just an in and out procedure. So it's not even like they put you under or anything, but you know, that's the only other thing that would be offered to you in the medical. And I'm not saying to do that because, you know, I think things are very affected when we cut it open, you know, and things are very affected when we go in and, you know, yeah, so it's not really my suggestion, but that would be your only other option. So you might just have to rock tap through some pain is really my point, you know, and you're not hurting yourself. Nobody has hurt themselves, you know, it's scar tissue. You want to break that down. You want to break that up, you know, there's nothing in scar tissue that's helping you. It's just an obstruction. You know, and it's obstructing that nerve line wherever it is. It's obstructing that nerve and it's speaking to that nerve. So our meridians are our autonomic nervous system, and they're the nerve lines that connect to our organs. Nobody made up these lines and said, hey, let's make this the lungs. And you know what? Let's pretend that it ends right here at the nostrils that is connected to lungs. No, that's literally the beautiful map that we are, you know, that we actually have our lung line that comes all the way up and to our nostrils. And then our nerves speak of our lung health, those meridians. Yeah.
So Molly wondered on a follow-up to that, if the cyst is super painful to the touch, is there anything different you do about working with them?
I would probably do more pumping. I mean, Molly knows my breast health work too. So, you know, kind of like how I just go right to a cyst in the breast, which we'll have another cyst question to ovary, I think later, and this is not the same. But if it's in the skin or in the breast, which is in tissue skin, I would do more pumping, just that, you know, just to that wall of productive. And I would probably be doing 10 drops of frankincense every day. Or maybe, no, blue cypress won't cut it. I would probably be doing frankincense or sandalwood. And sandalwood, you'd need maybe more like 6 drops a day. And I would just, you know, keep putting a little bit of that Frankie or that sandalwood, and I would cool it down. Those are going to be anti-inflammatories, and they're going to cool it down. And usually it means that the pocket inside is more eruptive, you know, so some ganglion cysts are just there and they're like a dormant volcano. You know what I mean? And it could erupt, but it's dormant, you know? And then some of those, like the ones that really hurt, those are the ones that are like a volcano ready to erupt. And there's more inflammation and more pressure in there. And you need to cool it down and, you know, kind of decompress it a little bit slower and move some of that pain before you go trying to break it down, because that just is like, whoa, too much pain on pain. Yep.
For sure. And that leads us to our next question, which is Kristen's question. First, she wants to let you know she loves that you're doing these videos. So her question is that she has a client that has ovarian cysts. This client has had numerous ultrasounds, but her doctor hasn't given her any insight or help aside from letting her know that they aren't serious. She experiences long, heavy periods and sometimes abdominal pain. She has a lot going on in her life right now, and Kristen thinks that her first experience with cysts happened after the client and her husband decided to separate. A lot of layers. So what remedies might help her? Kristen was thinking a yoni steam. and thought that that perhaps might help her connect to her root and sacral chakra more. What do you think?
That's nice. Yes, I think pelvic floor steam is great for any reproductive issues, male or female, and pain from sacrum to hips, anything in that region. So I think you're onto something. When I think of what would go in that pelvic floor steam, my go-to for a bacteria or a fungal or like clear out would be mugwort, mugwort tea in a steam. This person with a cyst, I would way more want to be going mineral and cooling. So I'm thinking tulsi, I'm thinking nettle, I'm thinking seaweed, and I'm thinking of some cooling nutritives like linden flowers, or rose geranium, these are all going to be things that are going to go in the pelvic floor steam that are specific to a cyst, so I think of that. And so cooling, nourishing is where it's at. The thing I'll say with an ovarian cyst is we don't go pumping it. So whereas we might, right here, you're at the lymphatic drain. So if you have a cyst in your breast or in your armpit, because people get them, it's very different than on an ovary or, that type of thing. So we don't go pumping and pressing those as much. A question would be, is this on the left or right ovary? You know what I mean? Like a lot of times women can't tell me. And that's kind of sad because that means they didn't get very much education about this cyst and there is zero remedy for the cyst. And they can be very painful. And people don't know they swell throughout the month. So they can really track them according to ovulation and menses. And those are when they swell the most. One or the other, sometimes both. But I would wonder about that. Like, is it the left, the right ovary? We're looking at the more masculine related, the holding a container. We call it providing in our society, but that gets really screwed up. Provide and receive has gotten really messed up. Let's remember it's called the avenue and the spark. Our masculine is the avenue, a container within something happens, and you can't spark anything in feminine right ovary. You can't spark anything without a container. And so here it is happening. That'd be an interesting play on like how this is connected to the divorce or separation, whichever it was. I'm sorry, can't remember, but so I think it speaks to that and looking at that. Since we have two ovaries, we want to be thinking about which one. And it really saddens me that women often can't tell me. And then I'll go and just palpate and put my hands in there. And then I find pain or I find it really swollen and big. And then I'm like, it's on your left, or it's on your right. And, and even they feel like, what? I don't even know, So that's an important piece of this. But yeah, I think pelvic steam is a great idea. But I also think this is a good douche because that fire is trapped. So I do think even though I'm not going to go pumping and squeezing that cyst itself, the pelvic floor needs to be opened up. So usually this happens with people who are either in a holding pattern down in their pelvis and the steam's going to calm them down. Same with the douche. But it's often people who maybe have more thickness and more fat cells around their center. And then they don't have flow, like things aren't moving freely through the cabinet down there. And we get dams in the river and everything pressurizes back and swells up the ovary. So fire needs to move and the ovaries are fiery. Our glands are like, you said this and I'm going to tell everyone, they're the speakers of the body. They're active and ready to go. Hormone means to spar. You know what I mean? To spar on, So let's keep that in mind. And that fire just needs to move or it's going to talk or get stuck and swell. And so sometimes they need to get that massage and get that lymph moving if they're more kapha. And sometimes they need to actually stretch and open and they need to get into those encapsulated little lymph nodes and they need to warm it up and juice it up. So you could really look, because assessment is so respectful when it's in a person's favor. So you might just even kind of look at that part of that person's body and appreciation, you know, and be able to be like, oh, it looks like things need to move more. I'm going to tell them how to move it. You know, I'm going to teach them how to use a gua sha, you know, or you're like, it looks so depleted or, you know, like deficient. And like there's some luster missing in there. And then you can be like, oh, I'm going to teach them how to juice it up, you know? And I think that's a really important thing with cysts, because it's usually fire that just isn't moving freely about the cabinet. And the other thing you could do with this is, I'm going to go back to the frankincense and the rose geranium and the sandalwood. Any or all of those as a blend would be really good for just putting right on that ovary, you know. All of those can go straight on the skin. So let's see, frankincense, rose geranium, so yeah, you know, but that'd probably be another 10 drops, like 5-6 drops twice a day. And you would just start reducing that inflammation, just like the ganglion cyst, and, you know, start kind of calming down the fire. And then you could be opening up and freeing up that space. And anyone going through a separation, come on, it's like our root chakras are so affected. It's foundational, it's partnership, it's intimacy. Think about the things we shared with that person in our root. It's precious, and it's rip your heart out, and it's like has failure stuff and everything, depending on the relationship and why it's even in a separation or divorce, you know? And so that's not stuff you can change. It's a process, but it is, how do you face the process, and how are you in the process, and how much can you kind of like, I'm not going to give up my intimacy and my respect of self and my root, and I'm just going to make sure, you know, I tread lightly and go slowly with this, and no decision at this immediate moment, but, you know, just like, I'm going to keep assessing and seeing if this is going to work for me or not. And I'm just going to face the truth as I go. And I often have to help people with that, in there, just, you know, really being like, do I stay or do I go? You know what I mean? So if I stay, there will be trouble. And you often think, if I go, there will be double. Isn't that what they say? And it's a real thing. It's a real thing. And all you can do is tread lightly and know you're in a timing process, and there is nothing right the moment, unless there are some serious red flags, and you just got to say, okay, the truth is here, and I'm going to face it. And we are having a conversation about when I see cysts. It's one of the common things with ovarian cysts or cervix or uterine cysts. These are the things I do talk to people about, because I rarely see cystic activity without there being something that's eruptive that isn't addressed yet or can't get solved, you know? And so that might be an old trauma, and they're holding a secret. It could be, I don't know what I'm going to do with this relationship. It could be, I don't know who I am and who I'm supposed to be in the world. Like, you know, it can be career and life path stuff too. That's root. These are all foundational. So that's the conversation, you know, what does your foundation need? What has it not gotten? You know, how am I going to give you the opposite of that? But the cyst itself needs cooling, nourishing. The difference with the ganglion cyst, just to like make a difference, the ganglion cyst needs warming, because we have to liquefy scar tissue. It needs warming. And then it also needs cooling. Like it needs a little bit of, you know, a little bit of warm, little bit of cold, like, you know, ginger and mint together, you know, that type of thing. Because you got to have enough warmth to break that stuff down, break down the tissue, but you also don't want to give it so much heat that it would erupt. So you have to kind of do a nice little blend. Whereas with an ovarian cyst, I'm just like, cool it down, tonify it. Bitters, alkaline, you know, and anti-inflammatory all the way. And I reduce that pocket down, and then look at the region that it's in and make sure it's breathing and flowing. Yeah. So a lot of things you could bring into that pelvic floor steam. I'll finish with this and see what we got next. The thing I notice is even when I'll do a pelvic floor steam, like with a client or something, or I'm teaching them how to, I have a little how-to box so people get acclimated and comfortable, or I'll show them my enema bucket and I'm like, yeah, and then you put it in here. And then it's like, oh, this isn't really that big of a deal. I'm like, let me represent. Yeah, I'm not going literal. I'm not taking my pants off, but let me show you where we go. We have to get comfortable. And what I'll notice is somebody will kind of be like, I went on the pelvic floor steam. I did one, but I just got really bored. Like people say that with the steam inhalations. It's like, I just got bored. I was just sitting there and I'm not sure what I should be doing with my arms, or like, what am I doing with my hands? So now I've said, maybe you have a foot soak under your feet, or you have a little hot water bottle on the ground and you can roll on the hot water bottle a little and have a little flow and warmth under your feet. So you're almost rocking on a water bottle. But I notice your feet need a little stability, and I need to teach people to pull their sits bones out, meaning open up their lovely butt cheeks. Yep, this is real stuff, people. And, and like open up your space, and like you're allowed to like expand your knees. I'm doing it. Expand your knees way out and open up that sits, and you get to practice your breathing, expanding, contracting. And you need, again, some oil and gua sha. Like, hello, my legs are wide open right now. That is like, come hither. It's like ready to go. It's right there at my disposal. So you could use your hands, and you could do some rocking and rolling of your shoulders while you massage your inner thigh. Or you could have some gua shas in your hand, and you could be working your back, and you could be stretching your leg out one side of that steam and then to the other. We just have to remember to stay active. It's the same thing as like the clients in the bathtub. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, you're done already. And they're like, I got bored. And I'm like, what? I have other clients I can't get out of the bathtub. I'm like, third time telling you you're in massage time now. You know what I mean? But the person who's like, yeah, I got bored. I couldn't stay in there. Or I got too hot. I'm like, you could have cooled it down is what I'm thinking. Like, there's cold water right there. You could cool it down and stay. But we don't move enough or breathe enough and like let the water and the bath be an experience. So we have to be willing to make, back to the opening, we got to make it an art. We got to make it, we got to get our music and our surroundings and some, greenery in there, not to be like the most beautiful, perfect flowers ever. It's like, just pick some greenery and bring it in and, bring in art and make it an art form. We got to make these things fun, playful, and normal. We need to normalize pleasure and normalize health and our ability to touch ourselves and respect ourselves. And we are allowed to go anywhere. I am allowed to go anywhere I want in this body, with this body. This is my body. I can go anywhere. I can touch anywhere. I can go into any of my orifices if I want to. I just think we have to really, and then we get to play and explore and start realizing, whoa, I totally know how I feel. And I know that doesn't feel right. And I'm going to see what I can do to make that feel better. We are allowed to feel better. And I don't think there's quite enough of that. A lot of protocols. I do them too, and regimes and things we should do and ways we should eat. But what about just playing and exploring our bodies? And this is everybody's body. This is everybody gets to explore. And imagine if we explored more and just really let ourselves go there with ourselves, and satiate our loins and our pelvic floor. Like, I just think it would really change a lot of things going on in the world around intimacy and choices on where we find that or what that looks like. And then how we feel so bad sometimes for having desires when we haven't met our own. So yes, you're going to desire things. And this is all pelvic floor work. Yeah. And then, maybe we'd start having less cysts. The only other thing I'll say to cysts is yeast. there could be a yeast overgrowth where nothing seems to work until the yeast is handled. And we do give yeast back and forth to each other. It's contagious. Yeah. So sometimes your partner has to get in if you have one. Sometimes you have to get your partner in on, maybe, looking at yeast-free diet or getting yeast-free themselves. And that can get in the mouth too, because we share intimacy in many ways. So that can get into the mouth and kind of down into the stomach, and it can be living in our cavities. It can live inside a penis channel and get into the urinary tract too. So when men are having a lot of urinary tract issues or urethritis, or, I often think about, I wonder, all of this, is part of that cystic picture. So that's the most common person who gets a cyst, has yeast overgrowth. In my world, in what I can tell you in my research. Remember, everyone gives you opinion. You can like mine or not. I really give you permission to decide how things feel and see what you want to do with it. Yeah.
Powerful messages. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
And that's time for us today. We do have
Really?
a couple of questions. It is.
Oh.
We have a couple of questions that we'll be kicking off the next session with from Molly and from Martha. So do stay tuned and come back. I know you gals will. And I don't know if you all know, but we have a podcast. So you can take DeAnna anywhere you are. You can stand and wash your dishes. You can go for a walk. You could maybe plug in while you're driving, but you can get this inspiration wherever you happen to be. So take a look. It's called My Body. You can find it wherever you pod, anywhere that you listen for free. That's Spotify, iTunes, all sorts of places. So take a look at that. It's really fun. And we pull the information right out of these live streams. So you're going to be able to review all this good information. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook. And certainly if you like what you saw today, please do subscribe and you'll be notified when DeAnna comes live again. We'll be back, not next Thursday, but the Thursday after. Any closing remarks, DeAnna?
I have a great essential oil sale going on right now. Right?
That's true.
I think it's one of the biggest I've done. I might even do it for 2 months in a row. It just feels like I just keep having this feeling like people need to stock up on their essential oils and they need to be getting really good high quality. And I go to smaller farms and just really, I've been with these farms and, for a long time. So there's a lot of deep, rich history in my oils. But yeah, I just want to give a shout out to, I think we're on a 25% off essential oil special. So take advantage of that. And, you can also see our nice, beautiful new store, right? And check out just how much easier we've made it for you to be with us and learn from us and shop with us.
All right.
Thank you all for being in my life. Thank you.